I know Jed just introduced everybody, but I'll do a little re-up on names in a second. But to kick things off, we thought it would be really nice to give someone who has a really big bird's eye view of the industry, both from the back end and sort of secret formulation side of things, and also on the consumer and trend and forecasting, from a consumer and trend and forecasting perspective. So to that end, we're going to have Nicole Brown, who is the Chief Innovation Officer at Open Book Extracts, which is behind probably some of the best brands that you already know in the space. She's going to give us a little bit of an overview of what's happening in cannabis now and what's happening next. And then we'll dive into some of the specifics with our lovely panelists. So Nicole, I'll let you take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you, Verena, and good to see everyone. When you think about where we are and where we're going next, where it really all starts is with the consumer. And today, what we're seeing is consumers are taking matters into their own hands when it comes to making choices for their health and wellness and making choices just to live better lives. And that comes down to educating themselves on what are the best foods to eat and choices to make, beverages and alternative beverages to try, what cosmetic and beauty products they should be making better choices with. And so at Open Book Extracts, where we focus on cannabinoid ingredient innovation and formulation and designing those products that can support all the different types of high-quality brands you see up here, that's where the magic is really happening as far as being able to develop high-quality ingredients that can power all of the great products that you see in market, and then the work that's being done by the brands to educate those consumers and empower them to understand the nuances of these ingredients that are coming from the plant that can give them those better outcomes and those benefits that they're seeking is so important and so critical to how we are going to all move this kind of category forward within cannabis. And at Open Book Extracts, we talk about the 3 R's. We talk about research, we talk about regulatory and regulatory frameworks, and we talk about retail. And when it comes to research, that research is going to help validate the products that work, and it's going to help bridge that consumer trust gap that exists in the market. We work very closely with our partner, Radical Science, and Michelle's here with us today to help build that body of evidence and that research that supports all of these products and all these formulations that are being built. And then when it comes to the regulatory framework, we're all paying close attention to it. We know that that guidance is going to open up and create more opportunities for consumers to have access and distribution points. But in advance of that, we're seeing retailers step up. I'm sure many of you were here this morning for Sharon and Chris's talk and what Vitamin Shoppe is doing and taking that leadership position. And there's been more and more opportunities, with Melissa's brand at Macy's, with other distribution points for the beverage category. We're starting to see mainstream adoption and mainstream access points that's also going to help bring these products to consumers and give them the better outcomes that they're looking for.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Again, for anyone who's joining a little bit late, I'm Verena. I'm the co-founder of Gossamer. We have a publication and a brand in the space that caters to what we call people who also smoke weed. I will be moderating our lovely panelists today and hopefully guiding this conversation and making it as helpful as I can. With us, I have Melissa Jochim, who is the founder of High Beauty. We have James Choe, the CEO and founder of Vessel. Xander Shepard, the co-founder of Artet. We have Nicole Brown of Open Book Extracts, who you just heard from. And then we have Joline Rivera of Red Belly Honey. So between all 5 of them, we are covering a huge breadth of categories. We have honey, we have all forms of extractions and formulations, we have beverages, we have the sort of hardware and the consumer access point through Vessel, and then we obviously have topicals and beauty through High Beauty. So to that end, though, I would love to hear a little bit from each of you, and we can go down the line just to kick things off, to understand why you chose your particular category, and what that means for your business. Why did you choose to go into skincare when there are so many different other options in CBD, for example? So I'll let you kick things off.
Well, thank you. I think it's part of my DNA. I'm a chemist. I studied chemistry in college, and early on I realized the chemistry of beauty was my life's passion. I've been formulating for 33 years in the beauty space. I think my aha moment as a beauty entrepreneur was really seeing clean beauty brands that I've worked on, global brands, are actually been significant in creating clean beauty today. I've worked with hemp seed oils since 2004. It's been an ingredient, a go-to ingredient for me. And as it started shifting and changing in market, I was fascinated by what other ingredients we can work with in the plant from the basal layer out, and how I can make your skin cells beautiful and do that. So it's just, that's my DNA.
Thank you. James.
Yeah.
Let's go.
For us, I think between the team, we had about 15, 20 years of being in CPG and launching hundreds of products in nearly every category, and took our formula, moved into this space, and had some success building some of the leading brands in California, and realized quickly that it was extremely crowded already, plant touching, that is. And so we tend to be a little bit data-centric and thinking about ways to own the customer relationship more directly. We came from the retail world, and I think every brand aspires to do this part well. And so when we looked at the landscape, we're focusing more on the notion that every seed that was grown had to be consumed at some point, whether it was through vape or through smoking or what other modalities, that focusing more on the picks and shovels opportunity, just enabling consumers to have better experiences across all different products. It just was overlooked at the time. And so what you saw in Vessel was built not to be a vape brand, but it was a necessity as a small company to have focus. And what we saw at the time a few years back was $15 to $20 product really driving some of the experience for consumers. And so we took that angle, and a key differentiation for us as well was just being able to think about global or even all domestic, being able to ship to all 50 states directly, which is a big part of our decision making. So just being focused, building it that way enabled us to do what we're doing today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Xander, talk us through Artet and beverages.
Sure. So, how you doing, everybody? Artet is a family business. I run it with my two cousins, and really the inspiration and idea behind Artet initially was sort of a personal challenge to ourselves to figure out how to bring cannabis to Thanksgiving the following year.
Perfect timing.
Exactly. So it's sort of our non-official anniversary. And really the question we asked ourselves was, what would the expectations be of a product that could sit on a dinner table sort of as elegant as a Thanksgiving table? What would the expectations be of how it would make you feel, how it, what the format would look like, how it could sort of seamlessly integrate into those experiences that we as people sort of hold so dear, and sort of thinking about how food and beverage is regularly so core to those moments that are memorable, or sometimes we want to forget. But flash forward, and really now our mission with Artet is to create cannabinoid beverages for the modern bar cart. We see social drinking moving to a place where people have more power over choosing how they want to feel when it comes to what they drink, whether it be on the non-psychoactive, non-alcoholic side, on the alcoholic side, or frankly on the psychoactive, non-alcoholic side. And we are doing what we can to bring cannabis into those conversations and to challenge the idea that a well-made cocktail has to start with alcohol.
Nicole, I know you already gave us a little bit, but would love to hear more specifically about what drew you to open book extracts and why this sort of particular segment spoke to you.
Sure. And, for open book extracts, when we looked at the existing supply chain for the industry, and this was back in 2019, there was a lack of attention to quality and a lack of attention to innovation. And we felt very strongly that it was going to be critical to pay attention to the quality and the purity of the ingredients that you're producing, and the range of ingredients we produce, starting with your broad spectrum or full spectrum extracts, but then innovating through to all the various minor cannabinoids that you're starting to see dominate the market, whether it's CBN for sleep, THCV for energy and focus, and other of those minor cannabinoid ingredients, and producing those at quality and at scale, and then bringing those innovations to market bringing different types of technologies, whether it's for water-soluble ingredients to go into beverages, different technologies to go into cosmetic products or food and beverage products, so that really great products can be put on shelves that consumers can have trust in and confidence in, and that they work really well. And that's why we exist, and we are so proud to support many of the brands that are here in the showcase and work together so closely with the brands that are doing great work.
Thank you. All right, Joline, tell us a little. I know you have a couple sort of angles to the space, but would love to hear how you ended up with Red Belly Honey.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm the founder also of Kitchen Toke Media. Kitchen Toke is the first and only culinary cannabis media company informing people on culinary cannabis and the health and wellness benefits of it. In doing that, I really spent 17 years creating media for food brands. I used to do work for Food Network, Kraft Foods. I still do work for US Foods, report on food trends in the restaurant industry. In doing all of that work, I also was really paying attention to the chefs who were cooking with cannabis. And my co-designer, her dad got sick with cancer in 2016. He was in Missouri, and there was nothing available to him. They didn't have medicinal, I'm sorry, not 2016, 2011. They didn't have anything available. So I asked a couple of chefs to make some dark chocolates for me and ferried them down to Missouri, where I was able to sit and watch him eat them. 45 minutes later, I watched the pain lift from his face. I watched him have an appetite. I watched him want to play with his grandkids. It was so moving to me that I basically flipped my entire life upside down and decided to launch Kitchen Toke, hoping to help one more person have one good day. And in doing that work, I'm very adamant about functional food. I believe that food is medicine, and I believe that cannabis is food. So I noticed that in the landscape, when I started to really get into it, there was a lot of refined sugar being used in cannabis products. And I thought, I'll never get people to stop eating sweets. So if I can help them or meet them halfway and try to replace the refined sugar with natural sugars like syrup or honey, then that would be beneficial to people's health. And honey all by itself is a functional food. So now we have Red Belly Honey, which is the only honey in the world that's infused with cannabinoids from hemp by honeybees. The bees are eating a hemp product, and they put the cannabinoids in the honey for us. So it's also a single ingredient, and they also make it naturally water soluble because they're basically eating this dense oil product, breaking it down in their bee belly and expressing the cannabinoids in the honey for us. So there's no wait time, water soluble, and it's really good.
It's delicious, Joline. If
Thank
you haven't
you.
tried it, go try it. It's
Yeah,
so
go over
good.
there. You can taste it. It's open.
Well, thank you. I think already just hearing like the absolute breadth of categories, I remember even being here a couple years ago, and we were really talking about just CBD and sort of CBD as like a blanket term, and maybe a little bit in some skincare and maybe some tinctures. And we have seen, what that market expansion has looked like in the last 2 years, which is just astronomical. That said, I think there's also the flip side, which is, does cannabis or does CBD or any of the cannabinoids really need to be in everything? How does someone know what to look for? How does a consumer understand, well, I'm seeing that there's CBD at my gas station and there's, cannabinoids in my skincare, and I'm sort of curious to try it. How does a consumer start to parse this landscape now that it is so readily available, whether we're talking about cannabis, whether we're talking about, the ingestion method even? How do you all think about that when you think about your consumer and in terms of educating them or giving them an entry point when there are so many options?
I was just my first thought is I believe that we need to educate not just the cannabis consumer, but also the people who are making the cannabis goods.
Yeah.
And I think we need to, really pay attention as an industry on what we're doing and the information that we're providing. Yes, we have to produce all of the tests that are available, but I think we also need to discuss what is bioavailability and talk about, the differences between, what broad spectrum, isolate, full spectrum, and then also where the process that either makes it water soluble or naturally available. All of those things have to be within our industry first, and then we pass that forward, obviously, to the consumer. But I think we need to be doing more of this.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it comes down to making products that work and products that solve a problem and that meet a need. You're seeing that trend within the cannabis and CBD industry. You're seeing it outside of our industries as well when it comes to making products that are focused on specific conditions or need states. So making products that are going to help someone sleep better, a product that's going to relieve someone's anxiety or support their mental health, products that are going to help them have more energy or increased focus. And then once you determine what problem you're solving for, designing the product for everything from the ingredients you select, the form factor and the type of product you choose to meet that need where it exists. So everything from, where honey plays a role in someone's routine and someone's everyday wellness lifestyle, to having an alternative beverage, to making different choices in skincare. I think it's about creating the products that are going to serve that need and then educating and empowering your consumers to know why they work and how they work so that they can then understand it and know what they can choose and what they need.
Yeah, I think that we're also getting to a point now where we're sort of understanding or realizing that cannabis isn't a monolith and it's not sort of a one-size-fits-all solution. When we talk about Artet, we think of ourselves as a beverage company first and foremost, and look at sort of cannabis as sort of our prime or core ingredient. And to your point, Nicole, we think about the experiences we're creating products for. So when we launched our first product and we really focused on creating a cannabis product for the bar cart, potency and dosing was such a fundamental part of how we thought about the experience. And we were basically inverting what the industry was saying you had to do to find success, which was to have as many milligrams per milliliter as possible. And we were sort of saying that might be what has happened to date, but from our perspective, with our product, with the philosophy of what Artet is about and creating cannabis for cocktail moments, we want to give people the restraint to decide what their experience looks like. So if they want to pour a double, great. If they want to have a triple, great. If they want to have a single, also great. And every one of those experiences can be a cannabis-led experience where nobody feels like they're getting cheated out of, too much liquid or not enough liquid. And I think again, it comes back to that point of what is the function of what you're creating, and obviously the emotion and everything with a brand comes around it. But if you are not solving something with the ingredients you're putting into it, whether it be cannabis or sugar or the botanicals, then it's probably not necessary to include it, and it's going to sort of fall flat either immediately or eventually as consumers get smart. So for us, we've always been very unapologetic with sort of our philosophy on why we use the ingredients we do, whether it be the all-natural botanicals, whether it be the farms we source the cannabis from, and using higher quality sort of inputs with live resin versus distillate. And it all just speaks to the broader philosophy of Artet. I think that's sort of what you're starting to see now across the board, where people are realizing that not every single thing needs to necessarily have cannabis in it if you can't explain why, other than it just makes for a good story.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there a world in which, is there a consumer that could maybe have all of your products, or do you think they have to choose?
Yeah, I mean, you look at your daily routine, right? Think about, the products that you have first thing in the morning when you wake up, whether that's having, honey in your tea, you're putting on your self-care routine for your beauty products, you're taking different products with, CBD, CBG, THCV throughout your day. It's that modular innovation in your lifestyle that, to Xander's point, choosing what is going to be the right products for you based on your personal need state. Customized medicine and customized supplements are very much a focus area holistically right now. So I think that everyone should have the opportunity, and I do see a world in which you have that life cycle, that at the end of your day, you're having your beverages, you're taking your CBN sleep supplements, and there's room for so many products, again, that are focused on the experiences and delivering on the outcomes that people want to have.
Oh, I think with skincare is key. Function, benefit. You're buying a product because you want an action. And I work with such a wide variety of ingredients. We're called high beauty, and I often get asked, is this going to get me high? And I work with hemp seed oil, cannabis sativa seed oil. That's the inky name. And I'm working with cannabinoids based on what the need is. So I have blemish products that work with CBG. I have menopausal skin products that work with CBC. piece. So the why, when consumers are going to a product, it's mindful and thoughtful what's going into it so you see the action you're looking for. Hemp seed oil is, you literally, without a seed, we wouldn't have the plant. And you look at that ingredient, it's one ingredient of the thousands that were available to all of us. But really explaining that to your consumer and why they need this ingredient, they're starting to ask those questions. We have a 9% engagement rate on our following, and that's insane because we educate, and we spend so much time educating. And it's not just cannabis ingredients, it's why do I need sunflower oil? Why do I need pomegranate, you know? So.
Yeah, I always think that beauty is a really good analogy for cannabis, just because when you talk about the beauty consumer, they are so trained at this point to want to educate themselves on all of the different ingredients and how they work and why they might pick one particular moisturizer over another. And as the conversation, I think, in beauty in particular starts to push forward beyond just this skincare has cannabis in it to, well, what kind of cannabis? What kind of cannabinoids? How much? At what point is, it effective? I guess my question is also, how much of that education is on the brands? How much of it is on the retailer? What does that sort of gap look like between, the very forward-looking products that you all are making, what the potential future consumer demand might be, and what the current consumer understanding is? How do you visualize that, and how do you solve for that?
I think for us, and again, I'm sure there's a spectrum of answers here because we're all, despite using a coarse, unifying ingredient, we're dealing with fundamentally different industries or categories or experiences. And I think for us, our biggest, challenge when we get up every day is convincing one more person that or not convincing, letting somebody know that they have permission to ask for a product like Artet. When you're sort of innovating a new experience, you have to give people the understanding that it's something that exists. Once we put a drink in their hand, the light bulb goes off, but getting them over that hurdle to know that they can go to a store and they can ask for it and that it exists in the world, for us, is our biggest challenge. So we spend a tremendous amount of time when it comes to marketing thinking about it through that prism, thinking about it through our own channels, and then also how we can empower our retail partners to help champion that narrative of cannabis for cocktail moments, and helping somebody who maybe comes into a store thinking that what they're looking for is an edible to get them off of alcohol, or to not get them off necessarily, but just sort of complement or supplement or exist in parallel with other things that they consume, to say, actually, now here's it's in a format that's familiar and exciting. That's sort of what we do every day, and that's kind of how we think about it. And we have a tremendous amount of responsibility to have our retail partners feel empowered to tell that story. So it definitely is both of us, but the way we look at it is help them become our best representative, not just for our brand, but frankly the rest of the beverage category.
Yeah, I mean, you're sort of fundamentally retraining someone from, I have a dinner party to go to tonight, so on the way there I'm going to stop at the liquor store and pick up a bottle of wine, and you have to retrain the consumer to say, actually, I'm going to stop at the dispensary instead. It really starts at that initial decision making, which is a fascinating and incredible amount of work on the brand side to sort of say, here's where it really starts. James, I think what you do with Vessel is particularly relevant in this case because you don't, in some ways, actually offer them a cannabis product at all. What you're offering is a vehicle or the access point or the ability for them to consume. So how do you think about that in terms of being relatively agnostic in that sense?
It is agnostic, but still the number one question we always get asked is what brand would we recommend, or what products would we recommend? And so it puts some onus on our team to be well versed in all players in the space. We're supportive of them, and I'll go back to even just the brand's responsibility. When you think about it, we're in this nascent industry that gets to speak to anyone from 21 to 90 years old, and there lies the trick that I equate it to almost like the coach. For many of you who've played sports, for years they tell you the same thing, the same drills over and over, but there was always the one coach that connected with you best, and it always came down to their language, their delivery. And when you think about brands, I think it's the guilty pleasure of trying to be all things to everybody. We do have this responsibility to develop, though, a language that connects with audiences at all ranges. And so even though we're in the ancillary side of things, our responsibility is no different. That as a brand, we're always trying to identify how consumers will understand what we have to offer best, including our peers in the industry. Just being a resource of information, helping them discern better from better. It's a tough thing to do, but it's that constant interaction and engagement that we have, whether it's through content or just customer support. Just being available is just half the battle, because the questions are so nuanced in most cases. So I would just say that the one-size-fits-all approach, while it's the guilty pleasure that we try to pursue it, it's very nuanced per customer, and just being available in that sense has always been helpful.
I have just two more questions because we don't have a ton of time left. One question I have, which is, you are all sort of pioneering different categories in the space. And as we all know, this is an ever-shifting landscape with, in some cases too much regulation and in some cases too little. How does that impact how you think about either future category expansion? How does that impact the way you market your product or position your product, knowing that the legal and regulatory landscape could sort of change at any point in time, or frankly, in the absence of anything that is, particularly specific?
I think for food, right now, a lot of the people who are producing a food product in the industry have to have it tested the same way that you test oils and flours. And I think that's a problem. Because if you were to test even, let's just say a raw tomato, the way we test a cannabis product, there's going to be a fermentation flag in there that's going to raise the flags of a basic COA. So when you think about, I work with a chef, his name is David Utsubata, he's out of Boston, and he's producing ice cream. It's called Cloud Creamery. And he's lovely, he's wonderful, his product is amazing. He's having trouble getting his food tested, and he's producing ice cream. Now we know, that he's got some obstacles, especially with cream and dairy, and he's also going to produce vegan ice creams. But I think we have to figure out a way, a testing regulation for actual food products, from natural product foods to, anything else that's being produced. We can't just have one standard test for all cannabis products. So we really need to move the needle on that.
I would agree. I think that, it's interesting because I'm even just thinking about some of the early obstacles we were faced with when, as I mentioned earlier, we were trying to sort of flip the narrative on kind of dosing per serving. And our initial bottles we produced, basically the COA came back as a fail. And it came back as a fail because the infrastructure or the machine that was being used to run the potency test couldn't go finite enough to actually do the test. So instead of sort of, saying, okay, we screwed up and we can't actually do it, they were like, well, you failed and you can't put this to market. So we had to go find a different lab. And, I think, again, 4 or 5 years ago, we were sort of pushing the barriers of what was making sense at that time. But again, not much has necessarily evolved since then. The machinery has gotten more refined to be able to, understand what 2.5 milligrams per serving looks like, thankfully. But at the same time, when it comes to sort of, as you said, I can't remember exactly how eloquently you said it, but food is...
Food is medicine?
Yeah, I think,
Very succinct.
Yeah, very succinct.
Yeah.
There aren't many standards in terms of the quality of the inputs that go in from the food side.
Right.
If you pass on the sort of cannabis side, you're all good.
Yeah.
They don't care if it's the worst ingredients
Really
on the
good
market or the best ingredients on the market. And unfortunately, right now, a lot of brands and sort of great creators in food and beverage, sort of experts are sort of dinged for that because they want to push the boundaries of bringing quality inputs to cannabis, but because of the way that the current apparatus is set up, they're sort of either hamstrung to do so or they're not able to actually celebrate or advocate or market those things.
So I'm going to add really quick to that, really quick. So if you think about a cannabis product, you're limited to your state. Like a full THC product, you only have what's available, whatever testing is in your state, unless you want to risk and FedEx your product somewhere to get it tested by a better lab. From Red Belly Honey, I I have the benefit. I FedEx my product to Israel with permission from the ministry and got it tested at Canisol Analytics, which is one of the most advanced cannabis research centers in the world. And we know exactly how many cannabinoids in there. I know how many terpenes are in there because I was able to do that. These guys with THC, they can't do it. And it's difficult.
I have time for one more question, and I want everyone to answer it. So we have to do it a little bit lightning round-ish side, or maybe a minute each. But I guess I know you already have chosen a lane, but what are you most excited for? If you could sort of like give everyone in this room, your best prediction for the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years. What are you most excited about, whether it's a different category, whether it's, something extremely forward-looking in your own category? What's next?
I'm really enjoying working with minor cannabinoids, and we are actually working with yeast-derived biosynthesized cannabinoids, so I'm unique up here, and I love the science behind that. From a sustainability and from a purity perspective. So our CBG comes from Lygos, and I work with them closely so that we can do clinical trials on what each ingredient does for the skin cell from the basal layer out. And I'm excited to play with these ingredients in intimate care products and feminine wellness products, and that's what's coming next for us. So.
Thank you. James?
I'm at an interesting point now. Our team, we've been in vape, and the easy answer for Vessel is that we're expanding into dry herb. We've worked tirelessly to earn a seat at the table in everything that we do, and I think our consumers have been asking for it. And then we're about a day away from our transaction closing, so we're getting acquired as well, which is a really interesting time for us because it gives us access to a global market that will start to play more friendly in other categories as well. So I'm inviting the collaboration, the ability to support other brands. But look, we just talked about things more from a US perspective, thinking about international and how everybody's going to respond to what we have to say. I think it's just key to be honest and understand that the excitement really is just to understand those key audiences and communities because the language is so different, what people understand, what they appreciate. But all in all, I think it's just doing more of the same. Like we're all plowing down this lane of creating meaningful experiences, thoughtful experiences at that, and it's just nice to be in the company of great brands.
Thank you. Xander, what's next?
I think with Artet, it's continuing to just challenge and break down those sort of calloused ideas that social experiences and social beverages have to fundamentally begin with alcohol, and just continuing to do our humble part in sort of thinking about how having fun can still be either net positive or just not detrimental to your health. So a big part of it is just having that opportunity to be a part of that behavioral shift, which we don't take lightly. And then just continuing to see as more states legalize and define regulations, and seeing how on-premise consumption is a big component of that. Like I said, when we got started with Artet, thinking about bringing it into experiences in places that we hold dear, having that actually be part of how it continues to roll out throughout the United States is very exciting for us, because again, we really created a product in essence that is very kind of on-premise inspired, if not sort of, kind of reimagined for an off-premise consumption experience. But the more that gets presented, I think the more adoption we'll see, the more shift in perception, and then kind of everything else that comes around with that in terms of creating a better ecosystem for everybody in the industry.
Nicole, what are you seeing? Where do you see the biggest opportunities in terms of cannabis and future categories?
Yeah, so like Melissa, we are also at Open Book Extracts very excited about the minor cannabinoids, and the one we find particularly exciting is THCV. We produce more THCV than anyone in the world right now, and demand is at an all-time high. And the reason for that is its potential use cases and benefits when it comes to supporting energy, focus, and even appetite management and reducing cravings. So the potential to see THCV as an ingredient that can be leveraged in all the types of energy products out there, whether it's your coffee, Red Bull and 5 Hour Energy opened up this category. 5 years from now, you're about to see a very different landscape when it comes to products that can support energy that are from naturally derived plant ingredients that can give you those outcomes. And when it comes to the category of weight management and reducing cravings, having something that is a plant-powered ingredient that can support those outcomes is something that will transform an entire industry. So we're quite excited to see how THCV is going to play that role.
Joline.
I feel like I could sit here and just listen to these guys talk all day. I'm really into the science. So right now, as I mentioned, Canisol Analytics, we're actually in the middle of a bioavailability study with our honey in rats and mice, and that's one. And mostly, to be honest, Red Belly honey is an everyday health and wellness product. I would really just like to meet consumers where they are. I want to be able to walk the grocery store and see infused foods all over the grocery store aisles. I want to walk into the produce and buy a hatch shell full of fresh cannabis leaves. I want to be able to walk down the cereal aisle. I want to have our foods in those aisles. So I'm really working hard to in the natural food product space. I'm, going to be at Expo West, having food, having a booth there next spring. So I'm really, really focused on being an everyday brand. I want us all to be used to it. I want you to be able to walk any aisle in the grocery store and see natural food products infused with cannabis.
Thank you. We are officially out of time. Thank you all so much for being a lovely audience and so captive. Thank you for your insights. And I'm sure if you see them in the space, you can ask them any questions you want. I'm going to make sure you're mobbed. Thank you.